What's going on, everybody? Happy Sunday. Welcome back to the Pack-A-Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at AndyHermanNFL. If you're listening or watching on YouTube, please make sure to like and subscribe. If you're listening to this to wherever you get your favorite podcasts on the audio version, please make sure to subscribe and give that 5-star review. Always appreciate that. But enough of all that. Let's get into today's main topic. We've now been through family night, preseason week 1, preseason week 2, a ton of training camp practices, joint practices with the Saints. I think I was at all but 2 practices of training camp, and the 2 days that I missed were just the walkthrough days, so didn't miss too much on those. So I've seen everything else. And what I want to do today is go over, and we did this sort of last week as well, but today I want to take the 10 players who I think through all of this so far are trending up, the 10 players who I think are very much trending down, and then 1 player who's just trending all over the place. So we'll finish there, but let's start with a positive, and let's start with the 10 players who are trending up. These are not in any specific order, just sort of a general gauge of which players are trending in the right direction. So players that you would want to buy stock in if the players were actually on some sort of NFL stock exchange. So let's start the way we started yesterday by talking about Jordan Love. And I want to talk about quarterback evaluation here just for a second. So humor me here. I think we get so caught up in what we're seeing on the field as fans that we're not letting true quarterback evaluation breathe. And the reason that I know that is because everyone wants instant gratification. I talked about this with Herman Green the other day, and we immediately want to see players come in and dominate. And as I talked to Herman Green about, it's like, listen, Herman Green took time to develop. Aaron Rodgers, Donald Driver, Brett Favre, Rashawn Gary, like Devontae Adams was a huge piece of that. Like the vast majority of even the really great Packers, David Bakhtiari, like they took time to develop. They were not finished products in their first couple seasons. Usually it takes a few years. And I do get very much so that Jordan Love is now in year 3 and we're starting to get to that put up or shut up time. I totally understand that. But the other reason that I know, where fans aren't really allowing quarterback evaluation to live is because after week 1, after Packers 49ers, multiple people were commenting on Twitter and on YouTube and everywhere else that Danny Etling is better than Jordan Love. Jordan Love needs to go. Danny Etling's better than Jordan Love. Even some comments on the episode yesterday. Well, Jordan Love only threw 50, completed 50%. That's who he is. Okay, let's hold on for a second. When we're evaluating quarterbacks, we're not doing it necessarily, depending on where they're at in their career, but certainly a player of Jordan Love's, unique, journey through the NFL and where he's at currently. You're not evaluating based on who they are right now. Not at that age. Listen, quarterback is a position in the NFL that now goes into its 40s. You are not taking a quarterback as young as Jordan Love, who is younger than some of the players in this current quarterback class draft, and saying, well, what is he right now? And that's all that matters. You're just not doing that. You look at the throws, the plus throws that he made in these 2 games, and that is why he was a first-round pick. That is why he was, he continues to be developed and potentially groomed as a future starting quarterback. There are just certain traits that Jordan Love possesses that very few throwers of the football in the world possess. Every quarterback, regardless of who they are, is trying to reach their peak potential as a player. And very few get to that top 10, 12, 15 level. And Packer fans have been extremely spoiled by going 3 decades plus of Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers. And that is going to change you as a fan. And you're going to want to see everything just be amazing, down in and down out. That's not how the rest of the NFL has lived over the past 30 years. It just doesn't always work that way. And what you see with Jordan Love, and I've been accused multiple times of being a Jordan Love hater. I'm not a Jordan Love hater, I promise you. I very much, as I've talked about in the past, I very much, as a fan of the Green Bay Packers, would love to see Jordan Love succeed. I am skeptical that he will ultimately reach his ceiling. But if you cannot see Jordan Love's ceiling and what he still could become, I don't know what to tell you. The balls that he's able to throw with timing and with the ball to Amari Rodgers where he's layering it over defenders. The spinneroonie sideline throw to Patrick Taylor that I know is probably just a hair wide and ultimately incomplete. Those type of things are not normal. Those things cannot be done. And I get that, a untrained eye, a fan of a team will look at somebody like Danny Etling making plays with his legs and be like, oh, look what that guy can do out there. You don't win like that in the NFL. This is not a win with your legs position in the NFL. If it was Tim Tebow, Colin Kaepernick, well, we're not going to talk about Colin Kaepernick, but Tim Tebow and multiple other quarterbacks who had that skill set, Pat White, whoever you want to bring up here, would just be dominant quarterbacks. Kyler Murray, Robert Griffin, and obviously Kyler Murray is a very, very good quarterback, and there's been others as well, Michael Vick, but you have to be able to be a good thrower of the football. Danny Etling, not there yet. Fun player, right? There's no question about it. Super fast, super athletic, brings some unique skill sets to the table. As a emergency quarterback, could even probably go out and play some special teams for you. Like, that's the type of athlete that he is. But as a pure pocket passer, he has years to go, and the upside is just not there as a ultimate number one style quarterback. This is no diss on Danny Etling. This isn't meant to drag Danny Etling here. This just is what it is. Now I watch people say Kurt Benkert is better than Jordan Love and he needs to be the number two. And so, I don't know what to tell you. You're just not seeing that. Kurt Benkert still is not to be claimed. This is not a drag on Kurt Benkert. He's a really awesome guy. Took to the Green Bay culture. Wish he was still involved with the Packers in some capacity, but he just didn't have it as a quarterback, and that's evidenced by the fact that he's still not with an NFL team. Wish him the best. Hope he finds someplace. Hope he takes that next step. But it just the upside wasn't there. When you are developing a quarterback, you are looking at plus traits. And that's what you're trying to get out of. And like I said, I'm still semi-skeptical that Jordan Love will ultimately get there, but holy crap, if the last week hasn't given hope to should be everyone for what he could possibly become. And I talked about this yesterday. You start now seeing you saw all the individual puzzle pieces right to the side. You had the box of Jordan Love, and you could see what the finished product was supposed to be. But he only had maybe a few pieces of the border and a random piece here or there where you knew where it went, and everything else was incomplete. And you just ever wondered, was this puzzle ever going to finish? And now during this offseason and over the course of the last couple of weeks, all of a sudden a few more of those pieces are in there and you're starting to think, okay, I can see what this is going to become potentially if we can stick with this longer and if we can get to see where those pieces finally fit. Might not ever get there, but if it does, you're talking about a player that has every skill set that you want. Now, there are going to be some massive bumps in the road. Decision-making needs to improve. Accuracy needs to improve. Those are going to be traits that you do wonder at some point, can they be improved enough to make a legitimate NFL, a really good NFL quarterback, right? But there's also plays that he's making that, you're talking about top 10 NFL quarterbacks at worst are the guys that are making those type of plays and type of throws. And there's certain quarterbacks, even as starters, that just can't make that type of play. So that's what you're looking at when you're evaluating a quarterback. If anyone's of the mind right now that Danny Etling's a better quarterback than Jordan Love, you just have to go back and reevaluate and rewatch because that's just not the case. And even if right now Danny Etling was a slightly better quarterback than Jordan Love, he's not. But if that were the case, it wouldn't matter. There's still not a debate of which one you'd try to develop moving forward. If Danny Etling makes the team and he ultimately starts 15 games, you're going 2-13 in those games. It just is what it is. There's your upside long term with Danny Etling is if Danny Etling hit everything perfectly, just hit it out of the park, is a 7-10 quarterback, and that might be being generous. There's no world where you get Danny Etling as a starting quarterback for 17 games and are perennial playoff team. Maybe you sneak into a playoffs once, but that's just not who it is. And again, I'm very sorry to Danny Etling friends and family. This is not meant to drag Danny Etling, but there's just certain quarterbacks who have certain ceilings. And this is not where I expected to go for 9 minutes on this podcast, but it's still a very important topic. Whereas Jordan Love, there's a good chance that he just is who he is. And that's ultimately who he is. He's a backup quarterback. He'll continue to get chances because of his high upside and just because he can make throws that other quarterbacks can't. Your top backup quarterbacks in the league right now are Taylor Heineke, are Gardner Minshew, are, those type of quarterbacks, right? like that's like, Mitch Trubisky, and unless he starts, I guess. But like those are the type of quarterbacks that are your top tier backup quarterbacks. Jordan Love will be in that category at worst, probably this year. I think he has the ability to be that, and for the foreseeable future, like that's his floor now, is probably a top to mid tier backup quarterback, and he'll continue to get chances because of his upside. But if he hits, on the high end ceiling, you're talking a top 10 quarterback at worst. And the high end ceiling is, as mentioned, in that Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen range. Don't think he's ever going to get there, but that's where the high end ceiling is. And now the floor, whereas before it was like, all right, is this guy even going to be a good backup? Now the floor is probably good backup, which isn't bad. So Green Bay has a lot of decisions. They're going to have to figure out what to do with Jordan Love long term. But my whole point here is if you're not seeing Jordan Love trending up in the right direction, if you're not getting why Matt LaFleur said he is light years ahead of where he was a season ago, if you're not sure why we've spent the last 2 days, taking the first 10 to 12 minutes to talk about Jordan Love, this is why. Because there is some real bright side to what he is doing right now, and it's worthy to talk about. And I just want you to be excited about that, because regardless of what it becomes, right now is a very fun time because we're seeing some of those pieces come together, and he has the potential to become something, whether that starter or even better than that will remain to be seen, but we're starting to see that come together. Could crash and burn, could be the next great thing. There's a random fun lottery ticket there. And I think I'll end with this, with the Jordan Love piece. I'll end with this by saying Jordan Love came into the league as a lottery ticket, and you knew that like this could either bust big or this could pay off huge. And then we went basically 2 years, in my opinion, where the stock in that lottery ticket, and see, I'm all bringing this around to the stock report. The stock in that lottery ticket kept going down, right? If you held the Jordan Love autograph rookie card, you at the beginning were like, okay, this could be something huge. And then the last 2 years, you're like seeing the prices drop and drop and drop and drop. Now, if I were investing, and maybe I just did, I might buy a couple Jordan Love rookie cards just because you're getting it at the low level. And now we're seeing that there's a chance that this lottery ticket could pay off again. It's still a lottery ticket. You still don't know if you're going to get anything out of it whatsoever, outside of maybe now a good backup quarterback. But that lottery ticket is back, and the high-end payout is still very much alive. And that is exciting if you are a Packer fan. So number one on my list, Jordan Love. All right, we're going to have to go through a lot of the other ones here in a little bit more rapid fire. But number two is Zach Tom. Fourth round pick, end of the fourth round, super athletic guy, very, sound technical wise, needs to put on functional strength. Still think as he evolves, like year 2, year 3, Zach Tom should be really freaking good. Like, because he has the technique, he has the want to, he has the athleticism. He just needs to put on a little bit more strength. And if he can do that, which he likely will in an NFL training room over the next couple years, look the heck out. And I'm getting closer to the belief that Zach Tom, even in an ideal condition where Elton Jenkins and David Bakhtiari are healthy, might end up being one of the top 5 offensive linemen by the end of this year. And I was talking with a couple people, Zach Cruz and Justice Mosqueda on Twitter on Saturday. I think Bakhtiari, Zach Tom, Josh Myers, John Runyon Jr., and Elton Jenkins are your 5 from left to right. If you want to switch Elton Jenkins, put him at left guard, Zach Tom, put him at right tackle. Okay, no big deal there. And I think there's a couple different ways you can go. But I think Zach Tom by the end of the year might be in that top 5. And that's saying something. And I think he's very much trending in the right direction. PFF has good grades on him, both of his games he's played. He's practiced at some time this offseason at all 5 positions along the offensive line. He has the potential to be very special. And like I said, he's definitely trending in the right direction. Kingsley Enagbare, the next on the list, I've talked about in the past, trended down at the beginning of camp, didn't do anything, and then San Francisco game, he shows up all week versus the Saints, he shows up. I thought he was okay against the Saints. I didn't think he had the greatest game, but in practices, he was almost unstoppable against the Saints. And like I said, against the 49ers, he really started to show up. And even against the Saints in the game, he had a couple pressures that were pretty impressive. So Kingsley Enagbare definitely trending up and very well could be, number 3 edge rusher by the time the season starts. And if not by the time the season starts, probably by the time the season ends. Number 4, Caleb Jones, undrafted rookie free agent. You tell me they signed some 6'7", 370-pound guy. I know he's down a little bit now in weight since then. There's just like, okay, that's a fun flyer to take on a guy, and he brings a different flavor to the offensive line that you don't really have, but like doesn't really fit the system. And, I don't know how he's going to fit in, and I don't know how he's going to move in this scheme and those sort of things. Screw all that. The dude's been awesome, especially like under the lens of undrafted free agent where you just think it's a flyer and you don't think you're going to get anything out of it. Guaranteed that if he doesn't make a 53-man roster either with the Packers or somebody else, that he will be back as the top guy on the Packers practice squad. And I am leaning very much as of this moment that Caleb Jones is going to make the 53. That's how impressive he has been. I will love to see Caleb Jones even in a greater capacity to see just exactly how he can hold up against some of the top tier competition. Again, this is a sink or swim thing. Maybe he's the next Yosh Nijman and he's able to become something. Maybe he's the next Alex Light where they give him a couple years and it becomes nothing. But undrafted guy, you don't expect anything from. It has been a very strong start for him. Very excited to see what he can bring to the team. Juwann Winfree, this is simple. If Aaron Rodgers shouts you out on 2 separate occasions, one in a press conference, one on a sideline interview, that he's impressed with you, that should get everyone's attention, and that should tell you exactly the odds of Juwann Winfree making this team. At the beginning, I was very skeptical. I just, the wide receiver math gets very sketchy. It still is very sketchy, but 2 shout-outs from Aaron Rodgers makes that less sketchy for Juwann Winfree, and it should be noted, he's played pretty darn well in practice and in preseason as well. Isaiah McDuffie, we talked about him at length yesterday, but I think the most improved player from training camp a season ago to training camp now, he did nothing last year. Did nothing of note whatsoever. You watched him, he just looked a bit undersized. You didn't know if he was ever going to become anything, maybe a special teams guy. He looks like a legitimate linebacker right now. He is flying around the football, setting edges, getting pressures. He has been a joy to watch. I was going to say a revelation. That would have been a little bit strong, but he has been a joy to watch at inside linebacker. As mentioned yesterday, I think he might end up being linebacker 3 for Green Bay. I wouldn't even be shocked if they end up making some sort of role for Isaiah McDuffie this season. That's how good he has been in camp and preseason. Very excited about his progression. Number 7, a player we talked about just a second ago, Yosh Nijman. Listen, sometimes these projects don't always work out. 2 years as a sort of redshirt. In his 3rd year, he gets some playing time, made the most of it. He's looked really good as a left tackle. And I didn't know if he was ever going to get to that point, but I think he has really shown that he can be a starting tackle in this league. It may be more of a bottom tier starting tackle, but listen, if you are one of the best 32, or I guess best 64 tackles in football, you have a lot of value in this league and you're going to get paid. And if Green Bay has that on its roster while paying him peanuts because he's still he was like an undrafted guy and so on and so forth, like an exclusive rights free agent, that is huge. And what he could potentially bring to the team as a starter at left tackle with experience until David Bakhtiari is ready to go, he is trending in the right direction, and he has really put together a heck of a story from nothing to redshirt guy to starter to who knows, he could be the long-term starter for Green Bay if Bakhtiari can't really make it back full time. So he's been on the right track for sure. Jake Hansen, I know this has been a little bit of a contentious one, and people are like, why is Jake Hansen? I want to see Zach Tom in there. Listen, I would make an argument, and we'll talk about this other player in just a moment. I'd make an argument if you want a player off the starting line right now, I don't think it's Jake Hansen. I think it's Royce Newman. I think Jake Hansen's been just fine. And the Packers have actually talked about, I think it was the offensive line coach, or maybe it was Stenovich. I think it was Stenovich in obviously offensive coordinator now in the press conference, who said that he thought Jake Hansen, has been one of the most impressive players so far in training camp. So listen, they think very highly of him. We've heard that similar context talked about Ben Braden, and then Ben Braden got cut. So take some of that for what it's worth, but listen, Jake Hansen's had a nice camp. He's doing a good job. And at worst case scenario, and I've talked about this in the past, at worst case scenario, I think he's their next Lucas Patrick. I think that's who he is. And that's a really nice player to have as a depth piece at worst along your offensive line. And Patrick put together some pretty decent playing time as a starter as well. If Jake Hansen could be the next Lucas Patrick, I think Green Bay would be very thrilled. I think he can be better than that. I'll just say that right now. I think they'd be thrilled to have that type of player as a 6th round pick. Next is Kobe Jones. You talk about a player who came out of absolutely nowhere. This guy was like a throw-in player that they signed before camp. Like, you didn't think anything was going to come of this. and he's been really freaking good. Working with the ones at times, like he has earned his spot. I think he's a practice squad guy who will probably get called up for games this season. I think he's going to get a chance to play at some point this year, and hopefully he doesn't get. I don't think he's going to get claimed. I don't think he's been that good in the preseason games to get claimed, but a guy that I thought was just a bottom tier player that didn't have much of a chance when they originally signed him, to a guy that at minimum should be on the practice squad. That has been quite the story, and he had a really fun week of practice against the Saints. And then last on the positive side is Shamar Jean-Charles. This is a player too where I thought last year, this is an Isaiah McDuffie situation. I thought both of those guys were late round picks that just didn't show anything a season ago. And usually when you see that, fifth and sixth round pick, I want to say, for Shamar and McDuffie, when you see that, like the odds that they come back the next year and just are like, all right, ready to go, and now there's something, it usually just doesn't always happen that way. So the fact that Isaiah McDuffie is really playing well and might be linebacker 3, and the fact that Shamar Jean-Charles really looks like he could compete with Keyshawn Nixon for that number 4 corner spot and has looked just ridiculously better than he did a season ago, I think it's a testament to these coaches and the scouting staff and how everything on this team is, I think, really coming together, from how Brian Gutekunst and company are evaluating these players to how the coaches are getting them ready to play. And it takes some time. We talked about that at the onset with Jordan Love, but we're starting to see some of these players in year 2, year 3. TJ Slayton's another one that could have been on this list. Just the players continue to grow while they're with Green Bay. McDuffie, Shamar Jean-Charles, TJ Slayton, I think great examples of that this offseason. All right, my 10 that are trending down. Tyler Davis, I don't need to go over this anymore. I don't need to drag this out any longer. He's had one of the worst camps you can possibly imagine. Has struggled in camp with drops and inconsistencies and not making plays. And then in preseason, his blocking's been simply atrocious. He hasn't caught the ball. He had a play that resulted in an interception because he didn't catch the ball. He had a fumble. Like, those are things that cannot happen. And I'm going to say it again, the same thing I said yesterday. I got called out for it for some reason. There is potential within Tyler Davis. I know we want to cut everyone when they struggle. There is potential in him. He's fast. He's tall. He's got good hands usually, but he's been terrible, and that matters. So I think, like I said, practice squad guy for Tyler Davis. I think there's some developmental potential there still, but as of right now, could not have a player trending down more than Tyler Davis over the first 2 weeks of preseason and even throughout training camp. Number 2, Sean Rhyan. I love Sean Rhyan's tape at UCLA. I thought he would be able to come in, hopefully break that 3rd round curse, and potentially be really what we're talking about Zach Thomas, somebody that can come in and potentially start from you week 1. That has not been the case for Sean Rhyan. He has struggled immensely, and he does not look ready to start at all. In fact, I think if Green Bay is starting Sean Rhyan at some point this season, something has gone very wrong, because I think the majority of the Packers' offensive linemen are ahead of him right now. That is not to say, once again, that he can't develop into a really good player. I saw Josh Sitton when I watched him at UCLA. That's how good I thought he was. So I think there's still a lot of potential there, but it's been a rough start, and he needs better conditioning. He needs more, just strength and like an off-season conditioning program. And he needs way better technique. He has a ways to go. I think he can get there, but it's going to take a little bit of time with Sean Rhyan. Number 3 is Devontae Wyatt. And this is a player who has been a little bit slow on the upstart. And it was even noticeable in mini camps and OTAs, but you were like, all right, the pads aren't on and trench players are tough to gauge. Let's see what happens when the pads come on. And then the pads come on and training camp starts. Still wasn't making the big plays, and you would see him get washed out of some run plays. He struggled this week against the Saints. Didn't do pretty much anything in his snaps in his first preseason game. This is very early for a defensive lineman. And I just want to reiterate this again. This is not saying any of these players can't be good this year or in the future. Just saying that as of right now, they haven't been trending in the right direction. And that's not what you want to see from your 24-year-old defensive lineman. You're hoping you could come in and, see a little bit more substance there. Now, the flashes, very much there in practice. You will see him all of a sudden have a quick first step and move just like defensive linemen don't move. But technique-wise and holding up at the point of attack-wise, like those are things that he needs to be much better at. I think he's a rotational defensive lineman right now. He's the 5th best lineman on this defensive line. That's probably where he's going to stay. And even it wouldn't shock me if Jack Heflin is like the 6th defensive lineman, if on certain plays and on rundown specifically, if Heflin ends up getting more snaps than Devontae Wyatt, because Wyatt's got to hold up better at the point of attack. Number 4 is Patrick Taylor. Just think Tyler Goodson's been better. I think, they had an opportunity to play Patrick Taylor in the playoff game against the 49ers when A.J. Dillon went down and have him be the A.J. Dillon in that game. They didn't. They just kept going with Aaron Jones. And if you didn't trust him then, and he hasn't looked as good this season as he did last season, like what are we doing then? And I just think at that point, if he hasn't been better than he was last season and you didn't want to use him last season, all right, then you go in a different direction. I think Tyler Goodson has looked like the better running back there and probably the one that I would keep at this point. Number 5 is Cole Van Landen. This is a player that early on in OTAs and mini camps was the starter and looked like he was going to get legit starting opportunities. And since training camp starts, that's not been the case. I think he's struggled a little bit, and I think even guys like Caleb Jones have passed him along, and you start looking at that offensive lineman math. Elton Jenkins is off a pup. If David Bakhtiari comes back, I think Cole Van Landen could ultimately be the odd man out. I talked about this player yesterday, Amari Rodgers. I just haven't seen it yet, and I just need to see a little bit more burst, a little bit more acceleration, a little bit more run after the catch, a little bit more, coming back to the football, making sure that you're physical at the catch point. I haven't seen those things from Amari Rodgers, and if you read between the lines, Rodgers has said that he wants his 3 guys to be Lazard, Watkins, and Cobb, right? He's also shouted out Romeo Doubs and Juwan Winfrey, and then he's called out basically everyone else and the young guys, right? So I think, Doubs is part of that group that he's calling out as well, but he's signaled out the other 5 it's 5, right? At some capacity. And Christian Watson, we haven't seen yet. So who does that mean that he's ultimately calling out really? Again, I think Doubs is part of that, but it's Amari Rodgers and Samori Toure probably with a little Danny Davis and, Hyman and maybe those guys mixed in. But for the most part, I think he's probably calling out Amari, maybe a little bit of Toure, maybe a little bit of, of course, a little bit of Romeo Doubs as well. But you can sort of read between the lines of who he wants to see play better. Amari Rodgers is very much in that list, I would think. And if you just start doing, again, some of the Aaron Rodgers math here, the 3 veterans are the guys he wants. I guarantee you he knows Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs are not going anywhere. He keeps calling out Juwan Winfrey. I guarantee you if Brian Gutekunst said you can keep 6 wide receivers, those are probably the 6 that he's going to keep right now. And Amari and Toure are probably not on that list. So just for what it's worth, I think Amari probably not trending super well in the right direction right now. Number 7 is Rico Gafford. I thought at the beginning of camp, he really started out strong and was the front runner for that number 6 corner position. I don't know if that's the case anymore. I think Keandre Thomas might ultimately pass him by. He has struggled as a cover corner, and ultimately, if you're kept as a corner, that's the most important thing. And number 6, special teams matters a ton. Number 6 corner, the special teams matters a ton. But I mean, Shamar Jean-Charles has been far better. Keyshawn Nix has been far better. The top 3 guys, of course, they're fighting for that number 6 spot, and that probably comes down to Ento. I guess, Gafford and the rest of that group. But at this point, I think Gafford's probably on the outside looking in, and it's a lot different than where he was at the beginning of training camp. Number 8, Royce Newman, we talked about before. I was really hoping for a step from Royce Newman from year 1 to year 2. Sort of some of the things that I'm talking about with Sean Ryan, where if you put on some functional strength and work on your technique a little bit, you can be in a better position. Royce Newman played a lot of snaps last year, some good, some bad. But I thought he'd come back, again, with some more functional strength and be improved from a year ago. I haven't seen that so far. He looks kind of like the exact same player he was a season ago. And to me, that's a little bit disappointing, sort of trending down. Number 9, Rasheed Walker just hasn't been able to do any team reps. And I was going to say at the beginning, like this doesn't include any players that are injured, right? So like Christian Watson and Darnell Savage, like none of those guys are trending wrong just because they're injured. That just is what it is. That's just injury. But Rasheed Walker is injured to some extent, but he's still out there practicing every day. I think some of the injuries are holding him back, but just he's running out of time, right? You're a late 7th round pick and you need to get out there. He didn't play in these last 2 preseason games. You just want to see him get back out there and hopefully put some good tape out there. But I think the time is probably already run out for him to make a 53-man roster, and he's probably going to have to, be a practice squad guy for Green Bay. And then number 10 is Ty Summers. Just has not been part of their special teams plans. I thought he was really brutal tackling this week. And, again, all of a sudden, Quay Walker's on the team. Chris Barnes has looked great. Isaiah McDuffie looks great. And, for Ty Summers, it's just not trending in the right direction for him. The player that's all over the place is Romeo Doubs. And he has done a ton to trend up, and just show you what he's capable of. He's done quite a bit to trend down as well. Incorrect routes, not tracking the ball, tons of drop passes, really poor blocking. Those are going to be things that get him in trouble and not on the field. and he is a super talented player, and we have seen that, and he's going to consistently make plays. But I guarantee you, if this continues to happen with any sort of regularity, this Romeo Doubs will go from on Twitter of like Hall of Fame Romeo Doubs to they need to cut Romeo Doubs in a very short period of time. That's how fickle all of Packer fans are. But that will be a trend if this continues for Romeo Doubs. Super high on Romeo Doubs. I think he's going to be a star in this league. I think he is a star in the making, and I think he's going to trend up before you know it. But started high, has had some really low lows, has had some more really high highs, some more really low lows, some more really high highs. That's just been the state of his camp so far. You want to see that level out on the upper end a little bit more, but like I said, still very excited, but not sure what to make of Romeo Doubs stock right now because there's no wide receiver. Clearly, on this roster, there's no wide receiver that has even come close to making the plays that he has made in practice and in games. No receiver close. Not Lazard, not Cobb, not Watkins, not any of them. I'm not sure that all of the rest of the wide receivers combined have the plays that Romeo Doubs has in camp and preseason so far. And that's not hyperbole. I think that's legitimately true. I also don't know that any of the other receivers combined have, well, that's not true. We've had a lot of snafus from the wide receiver, but I don't think any other wide receivers had some of the snafus that Romeo Doubs has had either. So the stock's a little bit all over the place, still higher than lower, but you want to see that even out and again on the high side sooner rather than later. That's going to do it for me today. I appreciate you. And this was way longer than I was expecting because I went on a 12-minute Jordan Love diatribe at the beginning that I wasn't expecting. But I still had a lot of fun with this one. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to subscribe, follow, like, etc. If you haven't already. I'll be right back here tomorrow with a brand new episode. You're getting 3 straight days of Andy, so I apologize for that on the audio podcast. Obviously, you get me every day on YouTube. But until next time, and as always, go Pack-O.